Ed Bernstein Show. Now, here's Ed.
Well, it's known as the most difficult reservation to get in New York, which makes it probably the hardest table to get in any restaurant in the world. That's RAO's from New York City. And with me is Frank Pellegrino Jr., whose family, the founders of RAO's, and you're still like the CEO, I guess, right?
Yeah, I kind of am still the CEO. Thank you for the glorious introduction, and it's an honor to be here with you this day. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, this is such an amazing story. This little RAO's restaurant, 8 tables?
Now it's 10.
When it opened up, 8 tables in 1896.
Yeah.
Now it's 127,
29 years ago,
29, okay.
Theodore Roosevelt was the New York City Police Commissioner at that time.
Commissioner, not
Police
even president.
Commissioner, yeah. How about that?
So, how did it start? I mean, it was your great uncle and aunt.
Yeah. Charles RAO, back in 1896, purchased the Earhart Brewery, which was a common walk of life back then at the turn of the century. Breweries would open up on corners throughout neighborhoods, and they would disperse beer, and people would take it with buckets back home.
Right, so this is way before we had cans and bottles and mass produced. No. So you wanted a beer, you went down the street to your local little brewery.
Right.
And they were small, right?
Yeah, you picked up a tin of beer. You put oil around the rim of the bucket, and they'd fill it up, and it wouldn't overflow. The foam wouldn't go over and what have you. And so we bought the Earhart Brewery. Charles RAO bought it back in 1896. And one advantage Charles had was his parents had immigrated earlier. So he had the opportunity to learn English, which really put him head and shoulders above everybody else back in the day then.
There was a mass immigration in those at that time with Italians, Irish.
Yes, the Irish came before the Italians, and then the Italians came. Remarkably, they both immigrated to the United States purely so they can have good food. There was no food back there in those days, and the peasants in Italy worked on the farms and what have you. And they immigrated to the land of milk and honey and prosperity, America.
So when it started, it was basically a bar.
Yeah, it was. It had spittoons and everything else, and they grilled steak and chops. My Uncle Vincent was an avid griller, so to speak.
So your great uncle opened up the RAO's. It was kind of in Harlem, right?
That's right, East Harlem on 114th Street in the corner of Pleasant Avenue.
Right, and it's still.
Oh, it's still there today.
Place.
Same location, same family. Same lineage of guests as well, too.
Never expanded. It always was integrity with its origins.
That's right.
Right. Never changed. All right. So your great uncle and aunt opened up a bar, basically.
Bar and grill.
And by the way, they were grilling what, outside?
Yeah, they would grill outside.
Right. I mean,
they would cut open these steel barrels,
like
they look like oil barrels back in the day. I don't even know if younger people today even know what the barrel looks like. And they would cut them in half, fill it with charcoal, and they would make these grates or take whatever looked like a grill and put it on top of this open oil container or what have you, and cook away.
So sometime thereafter, families evolve, and your father takes over the running of the restaurant.
Yes.
Right, it was in the 70s, I think?
Well, in 1977, Mimi Sheridan, who was a renowned food critic for the New York Times, gave the restaurant 3 stars. Now, back in 1977, I think there were only 28,000 restaurants in New York City. The only 2 4-star restaurants were Le Cirque and Lattès, or Lattès had 3 stars. RAO's, this little mom and pop eatery, earned 3 stars. And after that, the phone never stopped ringing, couldn't even answer the phone, still don't answer the phone to this day at the restaurant. Our guests or people who have been coming to the restaurant before and ever since that review. And we always honored their support and are grateful for them helping us become what we are today.
And that's part of the uniqueness of this restaurant, is that your dad made a decision that he was going to stay in integrity with your current customers, and he was going to give them preference on the tables. And it evolved to a point where it almost like was like a co-op or a condominium, where people had vested interest, not a financial interest, but just a vested interest in the table. That's my table on Monday night.
That's right.
Right? And so they were in charge of that table and who was going to eat there. And if they couldn't make it for dinner,
they'd send somebody else, or they'd call my dad and give back the reservation. And it's really remarkable. And to this day, if you go there any night of the week, let's say you went there on a Monday night, 7 out of the 10 tables are held by regular reservation holders who have been coming every Monday night for the last 40 years. So that's really the secret to the exclusivity of the restaurant in New York. But what's really wonderful about it is the success, as I said a moment ago, has been built upon the shoulders of those guests. And without them, we wouldn't be who and what we are today. And
so, therefore, I mean, you've had 8 tables. How many seats did that translate to?
Even today, we do at maximum 65 covers a night.
65 covers a night. Okay, so that's why it's become one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult reservation to get for dinner anywhere. So in spite of that, you have a history of politicians, entertainers, sports figures, just very famous presidents, very famous people trying to get into the restaurant. And you just couldn't accommodate them.
Again, we'll never displace a regular for anybody. If anything, in a real emergency, like if the Pope called and wanted a table, we'll call one of our friends who have a table and say, hey, can we
ask permission?
Yes, may we please have the table back, and what have you. And those exchanges do go on. But again, that's part and parcel of the camaraderie and the relationships that they're familial at this point with 98% of our guests, if not 100%. And that's what we like to bring wherever we are, whether it be in Los Angeles or in Miami. It's about embracing people, and it's about appreciating them, because they have many other choices to go out and eat. They don't have to come to our restaurant. But we're so grateful that they do, and we try and show and express that to them every visit.
I want to talk to you about your dad for a minute.
Sure.
Your dad was a very versatile man. In addition to being an entrepreneur, restaurateur, chef, he was also a singer. He worked on cruise ships. He was an actor. He was in Sopranos, Goodfellas.
A host of Mickey Blue Eye. Goes on
Mickey
and on.
Blue, Law and Order, right?
Yeah, Law and Order too.
Law and Order.
Been everywhere.
Right. So, what was his first love? Was it singing or
his first love was the neighborhood of East Harlem. He was born and raised there, and just a block or two away from the restaurant. So you see the genesis and commitment to our people. It's all about the neighborhood, stickball, and just a lot of good times.
So,
but his passion was singing. Acting came about really by happenstance.
Was that as a result of relationships from the restaurant?
Yeah.
Did you meet Martin Scorsese at the restaurant?
So it all started with a dear friend, God bless him, he's still there every Thursday night, Joey Hunter, who back in the day was the president of the Ford Modeling Agency. And there was a photo of my dad taken with his mother. And he has a big dish of ravioli in his hand with my grandmother. It was a Sunday, apparently, that they took this photo at home. And Joey saw that photo, and he said, Frankie, that photo's fantastic. Maybe you want to get into acting, maybe do some commercials. And so my father, skeptical, said, yeah, why not? We'll give it a try. Lo and behold, like within the first few months of endeavoring upon this, polio the Regatta Cheese Company, called him and asked him to be in their commercial, the star of their commercial, where he plays a deli man behind the counter. And what's remarkable was they were so impressed with his performance that they were actually contemplating making him the national spokesperson for Palio Regatta Cheese. If he had done that, he would not have been able to create RAO's Homemade Specialty Foods, which is the sauce company.
Right.
So, you know, you never know how the universe works, but it seems to be in perfect order whether we like it or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but your dad never had any acting lessons per se.
No.
No, but he did have a background in singing and entertainment and that type of thing. Then at a very young age, you know, you grew up in New York. At a very young age, you went to work at the restaurant.
Yep.
At 12 years old.
6th grade. I came home from school. I was so excited because to me the summers were BMX bicycles, the beach, and hanging out with my friends. And I'll never forget when I came home from school on the last day, my father hollered down from upstairs. He said, "Frankie, I got something special for you. Sit at the table, I'll be right down." And so I'm sitting there at the kitchen table, which was the main office of our household. And my father says, "Guess what? I have something great for you. Starting on Monday, you're going to come to work with me." And I was like, I didn't do that bad in school. Why am I getting punished? But lo and behold, that was the beginning of my career in hospitality and what have you. And that's how I started out.
So starting out at that age, in that environment, I mean, you had sports figures coming in. You had heroes of yours, I assume, entertainers, musicians, Billy Joel.
Yeah, no,
right?
good friends. And
Good friends, right? I mean, very impressionable, I would think, on a 12-year-old. Do you have any, when you think back about like some of the people you may have met at that time, and who stands out in your mind?
There's one evening in particular that really stands out because you just couldn't, I still to this day can't believe the star power that was at this one table. And at this table on a Thursday night, and it happened to be Joey Hunter's table that he gave to somebody to use to another regular guest of ours, who I'll leave anonymous. But at that table was Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, Gloria Estefan, Mariah Carey, Rod Stewart, and who else? Gloria Estefan. And they all sang with my dad all night long, doo-wop songs. I kid you not. And then on another evening, we had Keith Richards there. And I can't find the darn photograph, but there's a photo of him and my dad at the corner of the bar after everybody has left the restaurant singing My Girl. Yeah, that's stuff you can't make up. And so, no, there's been quite a few moments and interactions. But the one thing that I had taken away from all of it is that we are people, and those people that we admire and look up to, when you see that they're real people too, they're that much more of an inspiration, particularly to a young guy like myself. And being so young and not really realizing all the dynamics of everything and who these people were for real, you know, it's kind of like a shock.
You were talking to me earlier about the emotion of serving these people when you, as a young man, when you just for the first time or have the responsibility of preparing and serving the appetizers, right? What was going through your mind then?
Sheer fear and anxiety, because not only did I have to pass the muster by my aunt, my uncle, and my father inside the kitchen, but most importantly, I had to make sure that those guests who have been coming for decades and real Italian-American, like first generation, approved of the execution of the food that I brought to their table. So it was really on me, and there's no menu at the restaurant. So I pull up a chair and I sit down with you. That's what my father, how he did it. Right. And that was passed on to me. And I was relatively young, so you see these old timers looking at this kid who's like 16 years old sitting in front of them, you know, like I'm part of the family over here, meaning their family. And And they look at you kind of skeptically, but like, yeah, we're rooting for you, kid. But when you pull it off and they really enjoyed, and it was the same as my aunt or my father or my uncle would make it, they're like, way to go, kid, doing a great job. And that was all the fuel I needed to keep going.
Over the years, I'm sure you gained respectability and confidence in those patrons.
I built a family
built trust, yeah.
out of those folks. They built a family with us, and a real special relationships.
What was your relationship with your father like?
My dad, without him, I certainly wouldn't be who I am today. I am so grateful for my upbringing. He was a very strict man. He was very rigid. He taught me the fundamental principles and character traits that can never fail you.
Such as?
Honesty, perseverance, patience, persistence, but being really conscientious in what it is that you are doing and giving 100% of yourself, and you're not allowed to quit.
What's most amazing to me is that here you have probably the most successful per square inch restaurant in the world.
It's only that big.
Right? And the pressure to expand, to capitalize, to make money off of that, to add seats, to add days, to add locations. The pressure is just overwhelming. And in spite of all of that, year after year after year after decade, your dad resisted that to keep the character and quality of what he was providing there. And he gave it up for money, basically.
Well, he
More
committed
important
to
him,
that
yeah,
and
instead
gave
of-
up the money side of it. However, what's really special about that is, again, the experience itself. It's very hard to recreate the energy and vibrancy of a room with 65 people inside of it, as opposed to a room with 200 people inside of it. So at the restaurant in New York, whomever you're engaged with who works there is part of the family. Like the newest employee we have is 20 years. So think about the camaraderie and the relationships and familiarity that individual has with all of the folks who support and frequent the restaurant, our guests there in New York. And the other thing you have to keep in mind, which is completely the antithesis of what hospitality is today, Ed Bernstein has a reservation at 7 o'clock. That's Ed Bernstein's table for the whole entire evening. You're not waiting to sit down, and nobody's asking you to leave. And ultimately what winds up taking place over the course of those 3 hours that you're sitting there is all of a sudden you find yourself talking to the group next to you. Mm-hmm. You're engaged with the people who work in the restaurant because they're so real and authentic. They all come from the neighborhood. It's a different experience. Now, from the source, we try and take some of that magic and bring it everywhere we go. And that starts with the team and working with them and really demonstrating to them what an incredible opportunity it is to be in hospitality and to be able to develop and build a rapport with the guests that we serve. Because in essence, they're our partners, the folks that work with us, our teams. They represent us. They're the frontline ambassadors to our future success. And we do our best to encourage that and cultivate it. Henceforth, we try not to bite off more than we can chew. It took us over 100 years to expand to Las Vegas. We're expediting things a little bit. It's like in 20-year increments. But nonetheless, as long as the integrity and heart and soul and spirit of what RAO's is about remains intact and continues to flourish, can't ask for anything more than that. There's no money in the world that can change that.
Legacy will outlive money. There became a point in time before your dad passed where through some conversations with you, convinced him, I guess, to expand outside of New York. And he talked about Las Vegas. You're also in Hollywood and now in Miami. But also, he created another little business called RAO's Specialties, right? What is the origin of that?
So, back in the late 80s, given the 3-star review by Mimi Sheridan back in 1977, the restaurant had surpassed its bandwidth in terms of capacity and being able to accommodate people who haven't been to the restaurant before. So much so that my father had to close the reservation books, and he would open it once a quarter. And what would happen is a line would form around the block from, we're on Pleasant Avenue, First Avenue's over here. There'd be a line of business people and what have you in the middle of East Harlem when it wasn't the nicest of neighborhoods, standing on line to make a reservation. And my father was overwhelmed by it and said, you know what, I cannot give RAOs, I cannot give the restaurant experience to all these folks. But what I can do is maybe give them a little bit of RAOs that they can have in their home. And that was part of the genesis of him creating the sauce company. And when he went about it, you know, no self-righteous Italian American at the time would buy, and I still in the portfolio of brands, Campbell's, but Prego and Ragu, nobody, if you were Italian, you wouldn't buy that. It was $1.75 at the time. But my father decided to, and rightfully so, stay true to his grandmother, who was my great-grandmother, and so on and so forth, and prepare our sauce recipe with the finest ingredients. And in order for him to do that, he had to go back to the mother country, the home country of Italy, and get the right tomatoes, olive oil, and what have you. And that is the secret to the success of the sauce, is the integrity of the product. And its integrity and Mother Nature have made it so that the nutritional facts and label of that jar is even more special because it's healthy. There's no preservatives, there's no additives, there's no sugar, unlike some of our competition and what have you. But again, it's a dedication to the best quality and best preparation.
So when you're relying on those ingredients coming from Italy, I assume that there have been times over the last 100 and some years that you had delivery problems. I mean, what would happen if you couldn't get the tomatoes from
right
delivery?
on, and believe it or not, when my father first started experimenting with the sauce and doing his test batches and what have you, we ran into quite a few of those issues. And those issues were the catalyst for moving all of the production over to Italy, where it's still made today in Naples, a town called Scafati.
So what was the first sauce that your dad did sell?
Marinara, marinara sauce.
And is that still the most popular?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing now. I mean, look, you go into the supermarket today and it looks like RAO's is taking over most of the markets. I mean, it's, you know, it's such a well-known premium brand today.
We're very grateful for that. But again, it's about the quality of the product and the integrity of the ingredients, and that it's Mother Nature at her best.
So did you learn how to cook at a young age?
Yes.
Did you have an interest in that?
I love to cook.
Yeah. And how about singing? You carry through with the singing and acting part?
Unfortunately, I spent my singing lesson money on some other things. No, I can't sing that well.
But the cooking, you have a love for.
Yeah, no, I do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love, and part of my role in the food company with Campbell's, is bringing that flavor and camaraderie from the restaurant into the home. And the home and homemade is really the whole style and service of the restaurant in New York City. It's really just amazing how it all ties together. But I get to work with kids. I do cooking classes and things like that, and go out and bring people together and show them how being at home and using our sauces and what have you is an opportunity to bring everybody together to celebrate what's most important, and that's each other and our relationships, our friendships, our family.
And it's a big challenge, I would think, to take everything that makes RAOs successful in New York and duplicate it in Miami or in LA. I mean, that's a very difficult task, yet alone rolling it out in supermarkets.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
And that's what governs the expansion. If it's not right, if we can't get the one in Miami right, there's no need in endeavoring upon another location somewhere else. It just doesn't work that way. And I'm grateful for that. The universe is the governor for our expansion. When it's right, it's right.
What's the most popular dish at RAO's?
There's a number of them. I could tell you some of my favorites and some classics like seafood salad, roasted peppers, baked clams. Pasta is something a little unique, esoteric. It's cabbage and sausage and a marinara sauce. The clam sauce there is great. We do a beautiful gemelli with pesto. That's really wonderful. Then on entrees, I'm a big fan of veal chop with cherry peppers, hot and sweet, chicken scapariello, lemon chicken, which my Uncle Vincent created back in the day. As a grill man, is still one of the best-selling dishes and most sought after that we prepare.
And of course, these tables are still booked in New York.
Yeah, I can't get a reservation.
And they're still open Monday to Friday.
That's
still
right.
only the 10 tables, same location, almost
Same
130
people.
years later. So if you want to get a little taste of the restaurant, you're going to have to go to Hollywood or to Miami to try
Who
it.
knows? Maybe we'll open up here again.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thank you so much,
No,
Frank
thank you, and
Pellegrino
real-
Jr.
Real pleasure.
An
and privilege.
unbelievable story
No,
and
thank you.
an unbelievable experience. RAO's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.